January 330 BCE, the Zagros Mountains. 3 months after destroying the largest army on Earth, Alexander appears unstoppable.
Darius has fled, Babylon has opened its gates, and Susa has surrendered without a fight.
No field army stands between him and the heart of Persia. To finish the conquest, he must reach Persepolis, and there is only one road, the Persian Gate. A narrow mountain pass, barely wide enough for an army to advance in formation. Alexander enters the pass with approximately 17,000 troops. But little does he know that above the cliffs is Ariobarzanes, the satrap of Persis, with thousands of defenders positioned on the heights, waiting in absolute silence. As the Macedonian column pushes deeper into the defile, the path is sealed by an improvised barricade. Rocks fall from above. Arrows strike from both slopes. There is no room to deploy. Forward movement stops. For the first time in his campaign, Alexander is forced to retreat. He leaves his dead behind. The road to Persepolis is closed. The man who shattered Persia in open battle has been stopped by a mountain pass. How can Alexander finish the conquest of Persia if he can't reach its ceremonial capital? Now watch what happens. Within days, Alexander will... If it fails, the conquest ends in these mountains. If it succeeds, the gates of Persepolis will open, and weeks later, its palaces will burn. By the end of this video, you'll see how Alexander reversed the only major defeat of his eastern campaign, and turned a mountain ambush into the collapse of Persian resistance. Alexander entered Babylon without a fight. He remained there for approximately a month. After years of continuous campaigning, the army was granted a period of rest, and Babylon offered it in abundance. The city received him ceremonially.
Reinforcements arrived from Greece, Macedonia, and Thrace. Administrative appointments were made.
Mazias, the former Persian commander at Gaugamela, was allowed to retain his satrapy, an early indication of Alexander's evolving imperial policy. From Babylon, Alexander marched to Susa. Susa also surrendered. Its treasury, tens of thousands of talents from the Greek mainland. Money was sent west to support Antipater against Spartan unrest. Yet Alexander did not remain in Susa for the winter. Darius was still alive, and so long as Darius lived, Persian legitimacy survived. To complete the conquest, politically as well as militarily, Alexander had to enter Persis, the Persian heartland. He had to reach Persepolis. But between Susa and the Persian heartland rose the Zagros Mountains, a natural barrier guarding the core of the empire. Alexander divided his army. Parmenion was sent along the royal road with the baggage train, the salient cavalry, Greek allies, and mercenaries, the slower but more secure route. Alexander led approximately 17,000 to 20,000 troops through the shorter mountain passes. This allowed the main column to move ahead without waiting for the baggage train. Moving through the mountains, Alexander encountered the Uxians, a tribal group that had historically demanded tribute from Persian armies in exchange for safe passage. When they attempted to impose the same demand on him, Alexander refused. Accounts differ on how they were subdued, but the Uxians were defeated, their settlements attacked, and an annual tribute imposed by Alexander. After this, resistance along the march continued without interruption. Scouting parties were reduced. The column extended across the valley floor. The approach to the Persian Gate begins with a wide plain, nearly 2 kilometers across. There was no sign of organized defense. The Macedonian army entered the narrowing defile at full march. At its critical point, the Persian Gate narrows sharply. In places, the pass is only a few meters wide. High ridges dominate both sides. The road curved southeast. The morning sun obscured visibility toward the slopes. Figures appeared on the ridgelines, assumed to be displaced. When the vanguard reached the bend in the pass, they encountered a solid wall of earth and stone blocking the route forward. In that moment, Alexander knew he had made a mistake. Too late to modify his advance. Once enough Macedonian troops had entered the prepared position, the attack began. Boulders rolled down from the northern slopes. Archers fired from elevated positions. Missiles descended from both sides at steep angles. There was no space to form. Rear units continued pressing forward, unaware of the scale of the ambush. Congestion increased. Casualties mounted rapidly. Alexander ordered a retreat. To extract the army, many dead were left behind. an act deeply dishonorable by Greek military standards. It was the first time in the Asian campaign that he was forced to withdraw under pressure. The Persian Gate held. Ariobarzanes, satrap of Persis and a veteran of Gaugamela, had chosen his ground carefully.
Ancient sources place Ariobarzanes' force between 25,000 and 40,000 men, but modern estimates are significantly lower.
Ariobarzanes did not advance from the pass. He held position. Behind him lay the road to Persepolis. Beyond it, the Persian heartland. Darius III had withdrawn to Media. Ariobarzanes knew that any delay in the mountains gave Darius time to assemble new forces. And at the Persian Gate, the Macedonian army could not maneuver off the road. Alexander now found himself in a position he could not resolve by force alone. There was no space for the phalanx to deploy, no room to form for a coordinated assault. Advancing through the pass had failed. There was no space for the phalanx to deploy, no room to form for a coordinated assault. Advancing through the pass had failed. Forcing it again would require the same approach and the same terrain. A smaller force could hold this position for as long as it remained supplied. The campaign's advance slowed. The road east remained blocked, and time was no longer working in his favor. Alexander was deep inside hostile territory. The royal road route taken by Parmenion lay far. So how would he break through? Sources differ on how the new route was identified. Some accounts suggest information obtained from prisoners, possibly including a local shepherd familiar with the terrain, revealed a secondary mountain path leading around the Persian position. The route was difficult, indirect, and dangerous in winter. Alexander decided to divide his forces again. A force of approximately 3,000 infantry remained in camp. Additional fires were lit at night to suggest the full army was still in. A second detachment was assigned to secure part of the mountain route. Alexander himself led the majority of the striking force along a more distant northern ascent, aiming to emerge behind Ariobarzanes' defenses. The march was severe. Cold air, steep inclines, unstable footing across rough terrain. After roughly 2 days of difficult progress, Macedonian units began reaching positions overlooking the Persian rear. At dawn, it began. Forces that had remained in the Macedonian camp advanced directly against the Persian front, fixing the defenders' attention on the pass. Once engaged in combat along the ridgelines, Persian units were drawn fully into the fight. Then the second blow fell. The second detachment engaged from elevated ground along the ridgeline. The defenders who had dominated the pass now faced coordinated pressure from multiple directions. Alexander descended from the rear heights into the Persian encampment. The decisive surprise. The narrow terrain that had once favored them now restricted withdrawal. Once engaged in combat along the ridgelines, Persian units were drawn fully into the fight. Then the second blow fell. Close combat followed. Ancient accounts report that in the final close fighting, some Persian defenders grappled with Macedonian soldiers and even used captured weapons against them. Ariobarzanes attempted to break through. Some sources claim he died fighting to the last. Others suggest he briefly escaped before being killed near Persepolis. By midday, organized Persian resistance in the pass had ceased. The Persian Gate was open. The city's governor, Tiridates, opened negotiations. The treasury was seized. Ancient sources. 4 months later, the palace complex was burned. Sources disagree on the motive. Some describe a drunken impulse. Others suggest revenge for Xerxes' burning of Athens. Whatever the cause, the destruction of Persepolis did not end the war. Darius fled further eastward. Alexander pursued into Media, then into Bactria, finally murdered by his own relative, Bessus. The king he had pursued across the empire was gone. Bessus now claimed the Persian throne. He would later be captured and executed by Alexander. There were no decisive battles to end the war. Instead, local revolts, garrisons left behind. Months spent securing territory. The army marched further east each year, beyond the limits originally imagined when the invasion began. 6 years later, Alexander reached the Indus. There he encountered King Porus. Porus did not wait behind his walls. He chose a battlefield near a river, with war elephants, heavy infantry, and chariots. Alexander now faced a difficult choice. Cross the river immediately, or wait and allow more time for preparation on the far side. Watch the Battle of Hydaspes now. Witness how tactical brilliance overcame seemingly insurmountable obstacles once again. If you're enjoying this historical breakdown, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an epic historical documentary.
Let's dive deeper into how Alexander's masterclass in strategy unfolded against the mighty forces of the East.
The march across the vast Asian continent tested the absolute limits of human endurance, transforming a regional Greek force into a global empire. Every city conquered brought new administrative challenges, forcing Alexander to adapt Persian governance structures with Macedonian military might. Supply lines stretched thousands of miles back to Pella, requiring local satraps to maintain absolute loyalty under the watchful eye of Macedonian garrisons. Yet, whispers of discontent began to brew among veterans who had marched thousands of miles away from their homeland for over a decade.
Alexander understood that keeping his army moving forward was the only way to prevent mutiny.
Rest now, soldiers. Our spears must be ready for the morning.
Rumors of the wealth of India fueled the ambitions of his commanders, pushing them past the Hindu Kush mountains into the fertile plains of the Punjab. Local rulers chose different paths. Some submitted peacefully, offering elephants and troops, while others prepared for total war. King Porus of Paurava stood out as a formidable monarch who refused to bow without a brutal, uncompromising struggle for his kingdom's sovereignty. The Hydaspes River lay before Alexander, a swollen, torrential barrier guarded by an army unlike any the Greeks had ever faced before. Porus stationed his massive war elephants directly along the banks, creating a living wall of terrifying muscle and tusks that deterred any direct frontal assault. Alexander engaged in a brilliant campaign of deception, moving his troops up and down the river at night to confuse the Indian scouts. Under the cover of a ferocious thunderstorm, Alexander led a core strike force across a hidden bend in the raging river upstream. Emerging on the opposite shore, the shock force caught Porus's vanguard completely off guard, neutralizing their initial defensive advantage. Porus reacted swiftly, pivoting his main battle line to face the unexpected threat, deploying his dreaded war elephants at the center of the formation. The ground shook as the heavy infantry and war elephants advanced, creating a deafening roar that tested the nerves of even the bravest veterans. Macedonian phalangites faced a terrifying new enemy, beasts that could trample shields, snap pikes, and toss grown men into the air like toys. Alexander utilized his superior cavalry mobility to outflank the Indian lines, targeting the flanks and the handlers atop the elephants. A torrential downpour turned the battlefield into a slick, muddy mire, severely hindering the movement of the heavy Indian chariots and infantry. Despite the chaos, Porus fought with extraordinary valor, leading his remaining forces from the back of his royal elephant until he was severely wounded. Surrounded and outmaneuvered, Porus was eventually brought before Alexander in a momentous meeting of two legendary conquerors. Instead of executing him, Alexander reinstated Porus as a ruler, cementing an alliance that expanded his influence deeper into the Indian subcontinent. Yet, at the Hyphasis River, the edge of the world was reached. Exhausted, homesick, and weary of Alexander retreated to his tent for 3 days in bitter disappointment. But reality forced him to listen to the collective voice of his loyal veterans. The great eastward expansion had reached its ultimate boundary. The turnaround began, marking the beginning of the empire's homeward chapter. Down the Hydaspes and Indus rivers, Alexander constructed a massive fleet, combining naval power with land columns to conquer the tribes of the river valley. During a fierce assault on the Malian stronghold, Alexander leaped over the fortress wall alone, taking a near-fatal arrow wound to the chest. Rumors of his death spread panic across the empire, but his miraculous survival restored the fierce loyalty and mythos surrounding his divine destiny. Crossing the brutal Gedrosian desert, the army suffered catastrophic losses from thirst, heat, and shifting. Returning to Susa and Babylon, Alexander initiated grand mass marriages, attempting to fuse Persian. But the dream of a unified world empire was fragile. Differences began to emerge as some Macedonian veterans. In June 323 BCE, the greatest conqueror in human history breathed his last at just 32 years of age. With no clear heir designated, his vast empire fractured instantly into bloody civil wars among his ambitious generals, the Diadochi. Yet, Hellenistic culture, trade routes, and cities founded by Alexander reshaped the ancient world from the Mediterranean to the borders of India for centuries. If you loved this deep dive into Alexander's legendary campaigns, make sure to hit that like button, leave a comment below with your favorite battle, and subscribe.